Towsary back, and of course, the Lamar Jackson, Joe Flacco, RG3 watching that we've been doing around here. We are joined by our head coach on behalf of the Living Classrooms Foundation. You can find him out on Twitter at Coach Billick, and you can also find him on your television on Saturday night down in Miami. Coach, I brought back the hat. I almost wore your Hard Knocks hat out on the Yellowstone Trail because my wife says it looks a little bit like a park ranger hat. It didn't pack well, and we didn't spend a whole lot of time in the park. But I thought it does have a little bit of a park ranger look. Don't you agree?
It does. It's a great hat, particularly for out in the sun. When I was up doing the Ravens practice about a week and a half ago when they were scrimmaging with the Rams, Lisa Dixon, who we all love, absolutely. She had one of my old hats there. I don't know, they had a stack of them or whatever. And so she brought it down. Thank God she did, because that was one of those hot, steamy, miserable days. Those are great hats to be out in sun with.
Who wants to see you in August without that hat? Let's be honest. I mean, that's a bad
look.
It's a signature item. You know what? Here's the truth. Had I worn that hat and in front of Old Faithful as I had planned to do, sort of to honor you and have a little fun, everyone would have said, you took Coach Billick's hat to Montana, right?
That's right. Would have been great.
That's what it would have been.
You'd have got a lot of hits with that.
You know what? I thought about you before we get to the football. I did a lot of driving out in the West, and I know you ski out in Park City, and I watched Hard Knocks the other night, and you're calling from your lake thing. People ask me, does Billick still do his lake thing? Billick's in Minnesota on the lake. No wonder you sound so calm and relaxed right now. You're out there catching trout or something, right?
Yeah, it's been great. We come up here. We've been coming here for 25 years. Very good friends that have a place up in Cook, Minnesota. It's actually Lake Vermilion. It's near the Canadian boundary water. But we were talking earlier. It's like heaven. I get away from the heat, humidity of Maryland, obviously, and it's going to be 65, maybe 70 degrees. It was a little warmer, but we were getting a lot of the smoke from some of the Canadian fires. I mean, it was noticeable to the point where if you worked out or got out and kayaked or whatever, you were coughing up a little bit. The smoke was that thick.
I had that out in Idaho and Montana, and Coach, my wife and I spent the night in Big Sky, Montana on a night of a meteor shower, which is something, can you imagine, middle of Montana or up where you are where there's no light. Maybe you saw the meteor shower last week, or you go and look for it in the earth. We woke up at 4 a.m. in Missoula, and we saw it, but where we were the first night of the 2 nights we were out there, the smoke was so thick that we walked out of a bar, and I thought they were bugs in the lights, and they were not bugs. It was ash falling like snow through the lights in the sky. I mean, people in Baltimore aren't familiar with that, and where you are right now, everybody I know in Washington, Seattle, Spokane, putting pictures up, you can't see the sun, literally.
Yeah, it's terrible, and it's great you got up there. People who have never been to Montana, Wyoming, up and through there don't fully appreciate why it is called Big Sky Country. I mean, it is unbelievable for anybody that hasn't been there. But it really is. And the California fires, I understand, are affecting it as well.
You always kid me about stuff I've done and stuff I haven't done. Driving through Montana made me want to get waders and learn how to fly fish, That's how beautiful and cool it was. Coach Billick is here. He's Coach Billick out on Twitter. Let's get some football here. You're going to Miami. I don't want to say that after 3 preseason games that I'm not ready to anoint the young man the next coming of anything, but I don't know, Coach, with Lamar Jackson. I don't see a guy that I'm feeling like is going to win 12 or 13 games for my football team anytime soon, and I see a guy who has all of the rawness that was advertised. I'm not saying he can't or won't get better, but anytime I see him running around, I'm nervous about all of this as a project.
Yeah, and any observation anybody makes about any team or any player strictly on preseason, it does so at their own peril. It's a different environment. But for a young quarterback like Lamar Jackson, this is all we can base it on going forward, and I think you size it up very well. At the end of the day, Lamar Jackson is a second-round pick. And what the expectation, the only reason people are looking at Lamar Jackson and talking about Joe Flacco and the heir apparent and how quickly he's going to do it is because he was pulled up into the first round. Now, having said that, that was a great move by the Baltimore Ravens to go get him with the last pick of the first round. But as I said when it happened, when that makes him a first round pick, period. And there are different sets of pressures, even if it's the last pick of the first round, that brings the kind of pressures that you and I are talking about right now, the expectation of what that means. The fact of the matter is, if he'd have been taken in the second round, which is probably where he's more accurately slotted, he wouldn't be carrying those pressures in, and would be if he had gone to any other team, they'd go, oh, okay, well, there's a project, and yeah, that, maybe he can compete later on, and that's where we are right now with Lamar Jackson. It's baby steps. We're seeing incremental improvement, but I agree with you in the assessment. His ability to operate purely from the pocket and win that way, the way you have to in the NFL, notwithstanding the great things he can do outside the pocket, we're a ways from that.
Where are we with Joe? Can Joe win 12 or 13 games this year? My vote is, yeah, I think he can. A lot of things got to go right, but I'm not down on Joe Flacco at this point, and I don't think anybody that's watched him throw the ball recently would be down on him. I think you'd be bullish on him right now. You'd feel good if you're the head coach of a team with Joe Flacco right now, Coach.
I would think so. He looks healthy. Even last year, there were remnants of the injury that you kind of just, for some reason, just didn't seem 100% right. No player, once you get into the season, is 100%. But he looks healthy. His arm looks good. He's got some weapons. The progression of the tight ends, we talked a lot about that on the broadcast against the Rams, and I imagine we'll see it this weekend against Miami. They are evolving, and that's going to be a strength for them. Like you say, a lot of things have to happen, not the least of which the offensive line has to stay healthy, and certainly Orlando Brown has to continue to come around as that right tackle. If those things happen, then there's no reason, again, with a good, solid defense and some of the things they're doing, it's certainly not a stretch to think that the Ravens could be an 11-12 win team.
He is our head coach on behalf of the Living Classrooms Foundation. Maritime Magic coming up. Coach, the Whalers are playing Maritime Magic this year. Bob Marley, my wife and I got married in Jamaica on a beach. Is This Love, the Bob Marley song, was our wedding song. So Maritime Magic is going to be even more special than ever this year. Make sure you get up onto the livingclassrooms.org website and find out more about that. Coach, of course, will be calling the action on WBAL as well as on the television screen this weekend for you on Saturday night down in Miami, where we'll see a little bit of Joe Flacco, a little bit of Lamar Jackson. And Luke and I have been arguing about this third quarterback thing. The Ravens never do it. It's not what they do. Now they got the Jimmy Smith suspension as well, and that roster spot becomes, do we need this for special teams? Do we need this on defense? Where are we going to need this against Buffalo? But the notion that you use the number one pick on a quarterback, Luke said something all summer long, which is, well, you use your number one pick on him. He better be at least good enough to be your backup. You better feel good enough that he could go out and back this thing up. They had Tyrod Taylor as a backup a couple years ago. I don't know, man. I don't know that I could feel good about what I've seen right now, and that leads me to, and I do feel good about what I've seen from RG3, to think that they're going to keep three quarterbacks right now.
Yeah, and it's a luxury. You'd like to, all the things you just laid out. There's a comfort zone in having a veteran like RG3 sitting behind Joe, but that comes at a price, and that's what Luke's referring to, because a lot of teams don't keep that third quarterback. You think about that's an expense, and that's a luxury, because I guarantee you that roster spot, that 53rd spot for a non-quarterback, that's going to be something that takes substantive snaps during the course of the season, maybe not even early. But that 50, 51st, 52nd, 53rd player are pivotal members that are going to, either as backups or more likely, going to give you a special teams presence. That's where you'd typically like to have that buffer of some special teams player, or, as you alluded to, if you have some issues, whether it's injury, whether it's suspension, like Jimmy Smith, that you carry someone rather than relying on pulling someone up from the practice squad or getting them through waivers into the practice squad or pulling them off the street to cover you. That's a little dicey. You'd like to have a little bit more depth than that. So, yeah, there's no question keeping three quarterbacks would be the right thing to do, but that is a luxury, and the Ravens are going to have to decide if that's a luxury they want to indulge in.
Maybe there's another way of looking at this, and I hadn't really thought about this, but isn't Lamar Jackson really a special teams player at this point? Isn't he a guy they're going to use 6 or 8 times a game as a decoy, as a weapon, tossing the ball, throwing the ball, let him kick the ball around a little bit, that he's going to be a specialist in that way far more than they're ever going to bring him in there to really be a quarterback and say, go run 3 series and go run the third quarter. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, and you could sell it that way. I'm not a big fan of using the talents of Lamar Jackson like that. Not because it can't help you, obviously. It does. There's no question. When you have a series, the Wildcat offense that I guess people refer to, that when you do that on a consistent basis, it forces the other team to commit practice time to, okay, what are we going to do, and how do we adjust our defensive calls when he is in the game and we're doing X. And that's a good thing. And short yardage, critical situation, short yardage, red zone, goal line, there can be value there. Now, having said that, we just talked about Joe Flacco. What quarterback worth his salt? When you say, I'm going to take my quarterback, my Super Bowl winning quarterback, the leader of this team, the guy we're going to rely on to get us to 11, 12 wins, in a critical situation, and take him off the field and put the ball in the hands of Lamar Jackson. Can you see that happening with Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers? And so that
I have a hard time thinking John Harbaugh is that kind of guy who wants to do that. But, I mean, you coached against it all the time. You coached a little bit with it with Cordell Stewart. That was a huge factor in defending the Steelers when they had that thing going on. But it was 20 years ago, and nobody else does it. I mean, they don't do it for all the reasons you just pointed out, right? I mean, it's... Right. And when the Steelers were doing it, they didn't have the future Hall of Fame quarterback in Ben Roethlisberger that they do now. Remember, they were limping through a bunch of different profiles at quarterback. There's a lot of teams do it for a lot of legitimate reasons because you don't have that guy at quarterback that in that critical situation. And if you're just using it at different times during a game when you're really ahead or whatever, okay, that's fine. But no one's going to take it seriously if that's the only time you're going to use it. You've got to use it in critical short yardage, red zone, goal line situations for teams to take it seriously to gain the advantage of making them prepare for it. So, yes, I can make a case for that, but I can't imagine Joe would be real thrilled to, this is a critical 3rd and 2. Joe, you come off the field, or you go stand out at wide receiver to where you're actually no part of this play. That's a tough one for me. Well, I think it's even tougher if it fails, right? And I've thought about this, the last 3 games, just watching him run the offense, thinking, where is this going to fit? How is this going to fit? And I am convinced that if they are sly and coy enough, he's going to make some first downs. He's going to score a touchdown or 2. You're going to look up one week and they're going to win 26-23, and he's going to have made some sort of impact or a play that's going to have won that game. You can sell me into buying into all of that, but I'm wondering how that works if it fails. And to your point, Joe, come off the field, it's 3rd and 2, then the play doesn't work, or he fumbles, something awful happens. I don't think when those plays happen, it seemed to me when Cordell Stewart came in, it was kind of electrifying at that time because good things generally happened when he got on the field in some sort of way that made other teams in week 6, 7, 8, 9 have to start to defense it. So it has to work the first couple times that you employ it. Otherwise, you're going to can it, right?
Right, and it was unique to Cordell Stewart than the Pittsburgh Steelers for the most part. And it's become more vogue since, and certainly given the nature of the game and college game, everybody has that kind of guy on their roster probably, even if he's not playing quarterback.
Sure.
So everybody dabbles in it to a degree, so everybody's ready for it. And the other thing is, I talk about the commitment of time that it takes for a team to prepare for that. How much time are you really going to spend in doing that? And therefore, are you really good at it? If you're going to run the zone read, and certainly Lamar can be good at it, but the rest of the team and executing something that you only, it's maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 plays. I know you've spent time on it during preseason. So this is not to say that you shouldn't do it and that it's a mistake to do it, but it comes at a cost, and it is a bit of an indicator that you have to add into the mix of this question of, do we keep three guys? What is the future for Lamar? How is he going to progress during the course of the season? At this point, if Joe is obviously and likely the guy all the way through, then it's basically just practice. And how much can you improve those individual skills, meaning the pocket skills, the regression reads, when you're relegated in practice to basically looking at a card and throwing what's on the card.
He is Coach Billick out on Twitter as well as at the NFL Network. He'll be calling the game on Saturday night from Miami, the always pivotal fourth preseason game this year. It still feels like the third, feels like the 10th, quite frankly. All of our WNST programming brought to you by our friends at Royal Farms. Real fresh, real fast. The coffee in my cup, the ROFO Rewards card, as well as the app. Make sure you're using that when you're pumping your gas. Royal Farms, real fresh, real fast. All of our sponsors, we appreciate all of them, from the Model Lyric and, of course, Sporticulture and Charles Newsonoff and Sons, as well as the Maryland Jockey Club and our friends at Pizza John's in Essex. Coach, the offensive line, watching Ronnie Stanley limp around a little bit. It's been a very, very smooth training camp. I brought up injuries with Coach Harbaugh last week, and he looked at me like an alien had been buzzed up and started quoting crazy TV shows about being stitious and not superstitious and all that. But the offensive line, we're going to go on to the field here. We're all going to get together on the 9th and play Buffalo, and I don't think anybody has going to have seen this offense operate the way it's going to look on September 9th. And that always sort of weirds me out, whether it's Marshall Yanda, whether it's Stanley, just that it has not been a fully cohesive unit to go out there through this preseason because of injuries and age and wear and tear and all that other stuff.
Yeah, you throw Orlando and Brown into the mix with the right tackle and how that's all going to work out. Yeah, you'd like to see them together going into it. Again, they're going to have lots of practice time going into it. I don't know that it has to happen in a game where you're rotating guys all the time either, until it's like anything. It was a little like Joe last year, wasn't it? Until I see it, I'm going to be a little uncomfortable. And then he got into the first game, and you were fine. And so it'll be that way with the offensive line. But you're right. I mean, that is a group that is, of all the things on this team that have to happen for as we talked about, for this to be an 11-12 win team and a playoff team, the depth and the health of the offensive line, not even withstanding how far Orlando Brown can come, but just the health of this offensive line is going to be job one, because I think they have the quality and the depth at enough of the other areas that it doesn't become as critical if notwithstanding Joe going down, God forbid, but I mean, any other area, they seem to have depth to where they can absorb that, which you have to have. Every team is going to have those injuries. The offensive line, like a lot of teams, because keep in mind, that's the largest single group you have on your football team. Where you're 5 across, you really got to be 7 deep. You got to be a solid 7 deep, meaning 7 players that can go into the rotation in your offensive line, and that's a lot of bodies. And when one goes down, finding one, because everybody's in the exact same position. Everybody is vulnerable with their depth in the offensive line, with very few exceptions, to that 7-player deep, that there's only so many options if you get hurt in the offensive line.
Coach, you're calling the game this week, and I know you've been doing a lot of prep work on the Ravens, and probably more so the last 2 years than any year. Who do you love on the team? Give me a couple of guys you've watched fly around that we've mentioned Orlando Brown a bunch, and I guess he'll be part of that conversation. You're talking about Hurst, who almost rolled up on Flacco on Monday night again. I'm assuming we'll see Zeus Jr. out on the right side. I'm assuming Marshall will be fine. Alex Lewis had a penalty the other night, but they love the way he plays, and I know they'd love to see him on the field for 16 games. But other places on the field, what do you love about the team? A couple of guys that are going to be key contributors this year.
Well, depth in the defensive line always continues to be amazing that the Ravens have that kind of depth. This kid, Seltzer, am I saying that correctly?
I believe you are.
And I don't have my sheets right here in front of me. I always mangle names, so I apologize for that if I'm mispronouncing it. But that sheer raw strength, there again, here is a depth in the defensive line that just seems to be endless sometimes when it comes to the Ravens. But again, a good, solid player that has a specific role. You look at a player like Carrera. I know he's been in their doghouse a little bit, but he seems to have performed well. And he's going to have to continue that on to make sure that he has a place on this roster and that they really believe that he can, live up to the expectations when they took him and the growth. I was very impressed with the growth and the change of position with Kaufusi. That is an element. You got to get that guy that big with that kind of arm length. So there again, we come back to the defensive line. I'd like to see these last couple games, and I'm not sure what his injury stat. Jalen Hill, remember he was the star camp last year. He was the guy because of the depth in the secondary that there were questions. He come on and unlikely going to make the team, and really came on in the preseason and played well. That would give them even more continued depth with the way they've gotten healthy in the secondary. So there's fans. There's a lot to watch for the last couple games, particularly with the. I look at the third preseason game, particularly on the road, was always a concern for me. Every team I ever been with, you didn't normally play well in that one, and because of the Hall of Fame game, this Indianapolis game, after a unique, huge time off, was a tough game. And so the Ravens, they didn't look as good against the Rams. Well, they didn't play any stars against the Rams. I wouldn't draw too many negative conclusions from the Indianapolis game, because that is always a tough atmosphere. Now, going on the road to Miami, I won't necessarily call it a short week, but a shorter week than you normally do in preseason, with the turnaround that they have, how they come together and the way some of the players play this week in Miami, I think is going to be real telling for us.
Coach, I've watched Hard Knocks with the Browns. I don't watch it every year, and some years I'm sort of into it. Some years it's, Marvin's doing it, and I want to watch it because he's my friend, or, Smitty's in it last year, and so I want to watch it. This year, I put it on, and the Jarvis Landry speech was just fantastic, I thought, in the first episode. But now we're getting to the point, and you mentioned how tough the third preseason game is. This is a really emotional, weird week to be around a football team, and I don't know that the fans really feel that, because no one has any emotion about these preseason games. They think they stink if you're a fan. But there's just a lot of drama and emotion and guys on the edge. It's a very, very tense time around the team this week, right?
It is, when you throw in all the factors in unique to Cleveland, in the sense that, yes, we're beginning to close in when it's been a long preseason, long training camp. Players getting tired and fatigued. Everybody's ready to let's go. Let's get on with this thing. You have a lot of players, the majority of which know I'm not going to be here in 2 weeks. So there's the pressure of, how do I show that I belong here? What's going to happen? So that pressure is mounting. Drama, I guess, if you want to say in TV parlance, where that's maybe a good thing, on a team that last year was 0-16, that is 1-31, and is desperately trying to prove that, yes, we belong in the National Football League. Yeah, there's a lot to carry around with that, and it does make it very compelling. And I've caught glimpses of it, some interesting things, some things that you kind of scratch your head, but we'll see where that leaves them. But there's no question that we're closing in on a very fatiguing, intense, passionate, drama-filled, intense time across the league.
The NFL Network. I'll be following you out of Coach Billick. We'll be watching you on Saturday night. Can't get enough Coach Billick in my life. It's football season. All brought to you by our friends at Living Classrooms Foundation. Maritime Magic coming up at the end of September on the 28th. That happens down at the at the Living Classrooms building, inside, outside, on the water down on Thames Street in Fells Point. You can learn more at livingclassrooms.org. Coach, rest up. Take your Coach Billick hat with you down to Miami, where I'm sure it'll be hot and humid on Saturday night, and try to keep everybody healthy. And watching Ronnie Stanley limp around, that's what we don't want to see in August. So keep him healthy down there, and we'll see you around the corner. It'll be no time. We'll be playing the Bills here in 2 weeks.
You got it.
There he goes, head coach Brian Billick, our partner on behalf of the Living Classrooms Foundation. Follow him out on Coach Billick. Follow him out on the NFL Network as he's drawing up playbook, as well as the Ravens game on Saturday night in Miami. Still one more against the Redskins. I already gave my tickets away. But I'll be there next Thursday night for the end of fake football. The 9th of September cannot come soon enough to a guy that's watched Oriole baseball all summer. The Buy at Toyota.com Audio Vault is there 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device. By downloading the TuneIn Radio app, we do come in crystal clear from wherever you happen to be. Our morning newspaper ships directly to your email inbox free of charge each and every morning. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life, guaranteed. The Maryland Jockey Club also sponsoring our morning newspaper. We have the entries at the top each and every day. The entries also on the front of WNST.net each and every day from anywhere you access it. Laurel's there. They're running the Maryland Million on October the 20th. Make sure you circle that date on your calendar. I'll be 50 years old by then. We still have our Nashville trip available as well just this week. My deadline's this weekend. If you want to join us to go to Nashville for my 50th birthday party, come along. Ravens playing on Sunday, October the 14th, 2018. I always wondered what I was going to look like when I turned 50. We'll find out in Nashville. I know what I'm going to look like on the second day. We're going to the Jack Daniels distillery. Might be a little sideways by 5 o'clock on Monday the 15th. That's Jim Palmer's birthday, so I have to have respect for that for cakes. Nasty at WNST.net reaches me. I am on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram. I stream live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. And, of course, if there's any breaking news at all, you get it first on the WNST Tech Service. That's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis is going to be here from 3 until 5, driving you home on Thursday. It is the SSV on WNST. And that is also heard on Sundays in the rebroadcast on Sunday morning. So getting you ready for football season as well. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST, Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.